Good afternoon, everyone, and a very warm welcome to all of you. I am Shruti Agrawal, your host for today's session, brought to you by G&Q, a platform dedicated to empowering startups through innovation, mentorship, and meaningful partnerships. Our today's session is on topic that every aspiring and inspiring founder should understand: building prototype and MVP to launch your startup. So, having an idea is exciting, but the real journey begins when you bring that idea to life. A well built prototype and MVP help you test your concept, gather feedback, and refine your product before taking it to the market. This saves your time, your effort, and investment. So, to guide us through this journey, we are joined by Mr. Mittu Tigi, CEO AIC IITK, an accomplished entrepreneur and a passionate enabler of the startup ecosystem. With over a decade of experience in nurturing startups, shaping growth strategies, and fostering responsible entrepreneurship, Mr. Mittu has played a pivotal role in helping founders transform ideas into scalable businesses. Through his leadership roles at Merstra Foundation, at Start Network Foundation, and as a visiting faculty at XIME Kochi, he continues to inspire and guide the next generation of entrepreneurs. So, without further ado, uh, I'm welcoming Mr. Mittu Tigi here. Over to you, sir, and a very warm welcome to our show.
Thank you, Shruti, for having me here. Really wonderful to be part of your program, and this is a very interesting topic. A lot of early stage startups find this, are confused between what's a prototype, what's the MVP, and how do I launch, how do I build an MVP, what do I have in an MVP. A lot of pressing questions. So very glad that you have selected this topic, and I'm excited to talk about this, uh, and hope we can clear some of the common misconceptions, some of the challenges that founders face at the end of this program. Uh, so let's go ahead, right? Um, what is an MVP? Like, because we're going to talk about the MVP a lot, let's try to define this. So, as the expansion goes, it's a minimum viable product. So this is in your journey of developing your product, from your idea to where you launch your your solution to the market. This could be considered as the first market ready version of your idea. Um, Everything else before that might not be a product in itself. So this might not have all the features that you are looking to build. This might not be the vision that you have, but it will address the core problem. It will have the very critical features that are needed for the customers or people whom you're building this solution for. But it might not have all the fancy features, right? And it needn't also have all the fancy features. um, then the next question is, why do
I'm
you?
so sorry, sir, I'm
Yeah,
interrupting, but there is some disturbance coming from your end because of the mic. Can you settle it down?
is it okay now?
Yeah, better.
Okay, so the next thing comes is, why do you want an MVP, right? What's the purpose behind it? So as you're going to build something really exciting, really valuable, and your vision might be like, too far ahead, and it might take a few years to build all of that that you have planned. But you might not have the time to do that very big product or very big solution that you want. So but you still need validation from the market. You might not have the capital to invest for the next 3 to 5 years to build that visionary version of your product. So you'll have to start with something small. So this is that version of something small. And this is the main purpose, is also to validate this idea. You need people to start using this so that you get an idea that, okay, the solution that you have envisioned works, the user experience is in alignment with the target customer. So all of this is why you have an MVP, right? It's an experimentation in itself. You're trying to gather feedback from customers at this point to better this version, better the MVP to maybe a alpha product or a beta product, and then have different versions of your product in the future. So this also coming from the startup development model called lean approach or lean methodology, which is basically what you do is you build, you deploy, you measure, which is your feedback system, and then you learn from this whole of these things, and then you repeat the whole exercise again, right? So early on, like if you go back like 20, 30 years back, because of a lot of the technological limitations and a lot of other reasons, especially with regard to digital capabilities of reaching to customers, etc., was very limited. You couldn't do these kind of building, right? Like in a traditional model, anything you wanted to build, you normally have something called a waterfall method, which is like you will keep building for months and months and months, and then all of a sudden, like a waterfall, you would put out the product into the market. You'd put out that big product into the market, right? This is how traditionally businesses used to build things. But today you have this lean methodology. This came from the Silicon Valley digital first startups, but now lean methodology is getting adopted in manufacturing also. So this is where you see things like rapid prototyping labs, small batch production. So everything from a software product to a hardware product can use this approach today. This was not possible early on because you didn't have things like 3D printing 30, 40 years back. So you couldn't build 3 or 4 prototypes and then test it out and then see if this is working and then come back and reiterate it again. So that capability was not there. But today you have this capabilities. You don't have to manufacture 500 units of a hardware product to launch it in the market to get a feedback. You can actually build like 5 of them through 3D printing plus rapid prototyping labs, etc., get it to the market, get it to the consumers, and then get that feedback to reiterate the next better version of your product. So that's the whole purpose of an MVP. Why do you build an MVP? Like, let's go a little bit deep into why you need the MVP, right? So of course, as we talked just now, the first thing is always to get that feedback loop from real users rather than at an early stage. When you're at an ideation stage or at a prototype stage, you normally would have a lot of assumptions, which is probably even assumptions within your founding team. You're assuming a lot of things. You're assuming this feature might be the most important thing that your user want, but you have no idea on that. You have no data on that. So you need such kind of data to see whether this feature makes sense, whether you should build the next critical feature on top of it, right? So the first thing is always to get that feedback. That's a primary requirement of an MVP, right? The second thing is, let's imagine you're building a product. Let it be a software or a hardware product, irrespective of the case. Let's say you want to build, there are 25 features that you have identified that your visionary product needs to have. Now, let's say each of this takes like 1 month to build. Each of this feature takes 1 month to build, and you have decided that I'm going to build all these 25 features and then launch the product in the market. It'll take you about 2 years to do that. Now, for 2 years, you need to definitely pay yourself, right? Because your product is not out there in the market, so you're not getting revenue. So you need to pay yourself, which means 2 years of salaries for you and the founding team, 2 years salary for the product development team without getting any money back, right? And for the investor also, if you, now let's say you're going to the investor, they also don't get any idea whether the product makes sense, because still that 2 years is over, everything is in paper, right? Nothing is there out there in the world. So let's imagine after 2 years you launch it, and then you realize the market has changed, what the customers needed have changed, everything has changed drastically, right? The world is going very fast these days. Innovations are happening in half decade timelines these days, and not in like decades. Like, you don't have to wait a decade to see a new innovation coming into the market. So 2 years is a huge amount of time for you to waste on launching a product. So when you wait that big of a time, you increase your risk of failure. So what an MVP does is helps you to launch this in a very shorter period of time, and definitely go back and get the feedback and all of the other things. But it also reduces the risk of failure because you are no longer in that assumption cycle, you're in that feedback loop with users. So which means you're getting real stuff, not just dreams and aspirations of a few founders sitting in a small room. Now instead you get from everybody else there in the market, right? So that comes to that fourth point, helps test assumptions quickly, right? So you always start with assumption at founders, right? And when it's always, you call it gut feelings to some extent, right? And gut feelings is what drives entrepreneurs. I agree on that. A lot of entrepreneurs have a lot of very strong gut feelings, and sometimes this is what makes them those successful entrepreneurs also. But you can't survive on gut feelings, or you can't scale a product on gut feelings. You need insights, you need data, and you need real feedback, right? So again, it comes back to that feedback loop here. uh, the fourth thing is, like, it saves a lot of time, money, energy, right? Like if you launch a particular feature, if the user doesn't want it and you took 2 years to build it, right? Or 2 years to launch that, then you waste a lot of time, effort, money, and not really good for the development of your startup. But let's say you launch MVP in 3 months and you have just two critical features that you thought were relevant. If one of them doesn't work, or one of them doesn't capture the attention of the user that much, or one of those features users don't really want it, right? They give that sort of feedback. You don't have to build further on that. Like you can like discontinue that, and the consumer will tell you like what is the feature that they're looking for. Now that they have some version of the product in their hand, they will give you the feedback that this is something that I am looking for. So you can go ahead and build on that further. So it helps you save time, money, reduces the risk of failure, gives you a real feedback loop, and whatever assumptions you have, like you can test it very quickly. So this is why you need to build an MVP today. Just giving you some terms, and probably you can think of this also in a chronological manner. So the first line, you see a term called POC, which is called proof of concept. Okay, so proof of concept is about uh, testing whether this works or not, right? Especially with a technology product, you need to see whether the technology actually works, right? Because if the technology doesn't work, no matter how great your MVP is, it's not going to solve the problem of the consumer, right? If you're building for something that's already there in the market, somebody else has created a similar product, you can always say the proof of concept exists, right? You don't have to build it from scratch. Like for example, today, if you're going to build a travel booking platform, you can already say, GoIbibo, Expedia, and hundreds of other platforms are there which have shown that dynamic pricing based travel booking is possible technologically today. We don't have to reinvent anything. So proof of concept is there, right? So sometimes your proof of concept can come from existing businesses out there also. You don't have to build it to prove that the proof of concept exists. But if you're building something that is a very strong IP, where you're inventing something, where there is a deep science or a deep tech involved, then definitely you need to have a proof of concept stage, where you build just the technology or just the science, and validate the technology concept over there, right? Now once that is done, you go to the next stage, right? Once you know that your technologically basically works, right? Like for example, you're using let's say a sort of a nano material to filter out water. Let's say that's something that you're trying to do right now. uh, you need to see whether that technology, that science work, whether that particular nanomaterial actually does filter water, right? You need to do that. That's what you do in a POC stage. Your prototype is where you use this science to build a very, very crude version of your product, right? It's not a product. You cannot call it a product at all. It's a very, very crude version of it. Sometimes the size might be too big, right? We used, there's a startup from Kerala who used to build a gesture control device, and their prototype looked like a very bulky thing on their hand, right? While they were actually trying to build something like a ring which can detect gesture, right? So the device is actually like just a ring, but the prototype had a lot of these equipments and wires and breadboards and lot of things around it, because that's how you build prototypes. So prototypes are very bulky, very crude. Unless you are the engineer behind it, nobody would understand what it actually does. uh, but what it saves you is it gives you a very very visual perspective on how this is going to look like, how this is going to work. And it also helps you to talk to your customer at this stage, right? Because now you can actually go to your customer and say, this is what we are trying to build, this is how it's going to be. Or this is a very crude version of it, I'm trying to reduce the size, I'm going to make it compact, I want to better the design of this. A lot of those things, a lot of those conversations can actually happen. And you can also start testing whether the consumer or the customer can use this, whether the usability, all of those things, can the user experience itself can be tested at this stage. Most technology led businesses will have a prototype stage, right? So I'm talking about all of this from a concept that whatever you're working on is something new and something innovative, not where you're building something very similar to something that is existing, because then you don't have to go to the POC and prototype and all of that, because you already have it out there in the market, so you don't have to do all of this again. You directly would go to an MVP and start from there. um, or you might have a prototype stage, but it would be a very very small stage, very very brief time period also for that you wouldn't even notice you have built a prototype. And in some cases, even let's say a software product, prototypes can be even a Figma drawing, right? Like you go to Figma and then you create a drawing of your application. That could be a prototype for a like a mobile app or a web based application. Today with AI playing a lot of role in mobile app development, things like Lovable and Emergent, and a lot of these tools being available there, it gets even more easier for you to build the MVP very very fast, right? So you can actually build these prototypes very fast these days, and even the MVP also, especially because if you're building something very non-hardware, you can easily build an MVP also today. So then comes your MVP, which is your minimum viable product. So this is the first version of your product that, as I said, is functional in nature, which means any customer who wants to use your product and get the solution that you're trying to give can actually experience that entire journey. They can come, buy the product, unbox the product, use it, get actual solutions for whatever the product or service is being created for. And this is where you get your early user. These are your first 100 users, or if you're a B2B, maybe the first 10 users you could think of, right? And they're okay with at this stage they are also okay that some of the features are not fine tuned, some of the features are not in the most refined manner. It's completely okay at this stage of time, because these are people who have an innovation mindset. They're called early adopters or innovators, and they're okay to have these kind of where things are a bit broken, things might not work every time. Those kind of things also do happen at this stage, because you have not refined every version of your product or every stage of the things. You're also discovering a lot of these things, but it actually helps you from a business to validate how much people want this product, right? You'll get those real feedbacks from consumers, and also, as I said, like it helps you to refine your product from there itself, which means you get real feedback from the market on the product, and then you keep refining a product again and again as the market is also evolving, and which leads you to PMF, which is product market fit. This is that stage at which a startup can actually exponentially scale, right? Till then you're mostly going to scale very slowly as a startup, right? POC, prototype, in comparison to revenue, right? POC, prototype, MVP, and MVP to PMF also, you might not grow at like that 10x growth that startups normally see. You grow very slowly in terms of revenue, because you're working a lot on the product rather than distribution and users and other things. But once you hit that PMF, where your refined product is really accepted by the market and the market really loves your product, the market will push the usage exponentially. So you will see exponential growth in terms of users. You'll see exponential growth in terms of revenue, and this is a growth stage. And this is actually the stage where professional VCs would come in and invest in you. Before this, it's mostly going to be government grants, angel funds, or even HNIs who can invest in your business. But sort of PMF or a bit before PMF is where you see, VCs coming in and investing in your product and taking it to the next level. So what they're looking for at this stage is also to see whether this is a scalable business or not. So this is how some of the terms that we would discuss, and this is some of the terms that you also would need to understand. Let's try to see what are some of these common challenges that you would face when you're trying to build an MVP. Uh, so the first thing is, a lot of people build a prototype and say, I have an MVP, right? This is a very common thing I see with a lot of startups. They're building a prototype, or let's say even a mock-up they have built, they might say, I have an MVP, right? That is one issue I see. The other issue I see is that where people go on to build a lot more than what is needed for an MVP, and they keep on building for a year and a half, and they won't launch the product in the market. Right? This is called a phenomena of overbuilding, right? More than what the market needs at this point of time, right? So these two things are actually a problem, right? Where you're building something very, very minimal that nobody can actually use and give you real feedback. That also doesn't work. The other thing also is bad because you have now wasted a lot of money, time, energy, and maybe even you're risking right now a lot more. Your risk of failure has increased a lot more than what it was a few months before. So both of these two things are wrong, right? Now, why both of these two things are also happening is probably because you have not properly identified your target audience, right? You probably are you're trying to, let's say you're trying to solve something in the real estate space, and you want to solve for real estate brokers. I'm just taking an example here. Let's say you're trying to solve for every type of broker out there in the market, somebody who has just 2 property that they manage to somebody who has 500 plus property that they manage. Right now, both these ranges, everybody has different problems, everybody wants different solutions, everybody works entirely differently. So how do you build the MVP? Right, it gets too complicated, nobody can find an answer. But your conscious mind tells you, if I target all the brokers in the market, I can get very good business for my company, right? Which ideally might not be the case. You have to focus on some segment of that target audience, not the entire audience that you have. You either have to pick brokers with like 10 to 50 properties, or you have to pick like brokers with 500 plus properties, because then you know what exactly is the MVP, right? Because somebody with 500 plus property might also have sub brokers who are working under them. So you might need certain specific features, like administrative features that they need, right? But somebody with just 10 to 20 properties might not have anyone working under them, so you might not even need that feature. So both these target audiences will define what is your minimum, right, in the MVP. So you need to identify what is the minimum in the MVP, and this cannot happen without finding who is your real target audience. The second thing would be like ignoring feedbacks, where you're getting feedbacks but you're not taking this. So these feedbacks could be from your mentors, could be from potential investors. If you're incubated somewhere, your incubator might be giving you some feedbacks. You're not taking these into account, and you're still on your own development pathway. That also is a common challenge I see when startups are building this MVP. So if you're having some mentors, if you're having some experts in the field who are telling you certain things, like whether it is overbuilding or whether it is underdeveloping, whether it is confusing with a prototype and MVP, take these feedbacks genuinely, and try to see if you can make those necessary changes so that it helps you in your growth. Finally, try to understand that MVP is a minimum viable product. It is an experimentation in itself. It is not it's not like the holy grail or the promised land that you launch an MVP and then you'll always be successful. That's not the case, right? There is scenario of failure. There is always a scenario of failure. What you're trying to do with MVP is to reduce the risk of failure or reduce the exposure of your failure. Like instead of spending 2 years and probably like 1 crore on your product development and then failing, it is better you spend like 3 months and maybe like 3 lakhs and then fail. So your burden of failure can be reduced. But when you do that, now let's say you have time and money, you can go ahead and do the other version or the other, you can pivot, you can find a new idea or you can find a new problem that you want to solve. All of that can happen. But if you spend like 2-3 years building a product and then launching and then failing after burning a lot of money, then you won't have the bandwidth to do that. So you won't have a bandwidth for plan B. So when you're building an MVP, always plan for that plan B also, because there could be chances of failures. It's life. You cannot predict everything in life. Um, let's then see. Let's how can we create? How can you create an MVP the right way, right? So the first thing is to identify the core value unit or the main value your product is delivering, right? Uh, so this comes, you have to go one step back right now and see what is the problem that you're solving, right? A lot of the times founders put, I'm solving 10 different problems, right? I'm solving something in the healthcare space, like every problem that's out there in the healthcare space I'm trying to solve, right? No, that doesn't happen, right? Let's say you're building electronic healthcare records, EHR, for hospitals, right? There are hundreds of problems. Maybe the doctors are not getting the time to type out all of these things in their system. So there are so many things, right? Maybe you don't have to build the entire EHR system because somebody else has already built it, but can you build a plugin that would actually solve for doctors to type in all these things, and it can automatically detect everything from the conversation they're having with the patient in the room and convert this to a note and then just automatically upload it? Today with AI and voice recognition and all of this, some of these things can be done, right? So look at what are that core problem that you're solving, right? You need to identify that problem very well. And of course, going back one more step, you need to understand who you're solving this problem for. Once you have the grasp on these two things, it gets very, very easy for you to identify what is your core value unit, right? Think of this as your must have, right? You cannot launch this product without your core value unit, because if this is not there, then your consumers are not going to use it at all, right? um, uh, like for example, if you want to launch a food delivery app today, right, your consumer is not going to launch without an option to pay online, right? You cannot say that payment is something that I will build later because it's an MVP. I don't want a payment interface right now, right? I will do only cash on delivery right now. It doesn't work in 2025 because 10-15 years of digital commerce, people are used to paying by things like UPI or card, or maybe today even with pay later integrations. So if you're launching, let's say, food delivery app which has some very interesting solutions that are better than better than Swiggy and Zomato, you can do it. I believe in you, you can do it. But then you cannot launch that product without a payment interface, because that becomes the core value of your product anyway, right? Without which such an MVP cannot exist in 2025. Maybe in 2010 it might have worked, but in 2025, no, that's not going to happen. Then you build that core interactions around that core value, right? So if it's a booking platform or if it's a food delivery platform, then the bare minimum thing is restaurants needs to list their food items. You need to discover food items. You need to order it. You need to order more than one item of each. You need to pay, right? These things are there, like everything without which this product cannot be launched, right? Then you go and create a pain and a gain map for users. Like what actually is the pain point for the user? What actually gives a additional value? That's called the gain map. So this is coming from something called the value proposition canvas. You can always go and Google this. So in a value proposition canvas, you're trying to map what is the pains and what is the gains of the users. This would also help you to identify what features will add a lot of value to the users and what features will not add value to the users. because you have already tried to understand your user here, and you have tried to understand who your user is. You try to understand what creates happiness for them, what creates sadness or loss for them, and this leads to creating that core value that you can give for your product. So next comes, how do you test, an MVP? Like once you've built it, like what happens, right? um, so the first thing would be to do a the first thing would be to do, like, collect your user feedback. So this is where you call alpha testing or beta testing, right? So mostly you would first launch a beta version of your product, right? Even for an MVP, you would launch a beta version. You might not launch it to everybody out there in the market. You might launch it to maybe a select few number of people. You might have seen this being done by even very very large companies. Like for example, whenever WhatsApp or Facebook launches a new feature, or even Instagram, when they launch a new feature, they will never launch that feature to their entire user base, right? That never happens. They will launch it to maybe like 10% of their users. And then they would test, and they would see whether how many of these 10% of users are actively using this feature, what is the feedback. They might do some impromptu surveys that you can take part in while you're using the app. Based on this, they will refine the product. So they get this feedback from the users, existing users, even for an existing feature, I'm saying. So when you're launching a new product also into the market, you do the same thing. You have a beta users. You might have a wait listing of users initially. So, or you might have identified 10 users or 15 users that could use the product initially, and then you give it out to them. They do the beta testing at this stage. They give you the feedback, and that leads to you to build a slightly improved version of the product. And that's probably, you can call it as an alpha version of the product. And there also you get and collect user feedback, right? You need to have some digital solutions to like landing pages, to see if people are coming and looking at the products, to track responses. You need to have integrations into the product to see how people are using each feature of the product. Like click maps and heat maps, etc., which will help you understand which feature people are clicking more, which feature people are not at all using or not at all opening up. So all of these internal data that you get from the usage of the app or the web application, or even if it's a hardware product, you can also get real feedback by interactions with the users on which feature of the hardware product that people are using more, which they're not at all using, which they don't like at all. So all of these feedback will actually give you to tweak your product for the next version. So and from there you go on to uh, you go on to reach more number of users. This can be organic in nature. You can do this organically, but of course, if you have the money, spend a little bit on performance marketing. Like, you don't have to spend a lot of money, but put in a minimum amount of money for a daily budget. Try to see how people are reacting to your, because by now you also want to know whether people would look at a content, click on it, and come and buy or use your product. You need to see that user pattern also, because you're trying to communicate some value that you have identified, which is coming from your value proposition. So you need to see whether that actually drives in users. So that's why I said an MVP is not just the technology part of the product. It's the entire user experience of them reading something about your product or service, and then coming to your website, or coming to your LinkedIn, Instagram, etc., and then taking the product. Maybe they're downloading the app, maybe they're coming on the website and signing up for the application or the solution. So they need to go through the real user journey to understand whether they like the product, because sometimes the tech is really good, right? Sometimes the solution works perfectly, but for somebody to get to that technology solution, somebody to sign up, right, it's a hell of a mess for them. And by the third click they would stop either logging in or downloading or whatever it is. So maybe your technology works perfectly well, but your user onboarding experience was worst, right? So you lost a customer. So you need to understand all of those things, not just whether the technology works. Not This is not a technology demo that you're trying to do. You're actually trying to see if the user loves the product. And the product, in traditional management, the product is defined as not just the content of it. It also includes the packaging, it also includes the presentation, it includes the messaging, communication, all of that, right? So in a digital world, your packaging is basically your website or your how do you, like let's say you're launching an MVP, but your app cannot be downloaded from Google Play or Apple store, right? It doesn't have that experience. Like, it creates a lot of mistrust, especially if you're just sending your SDK files over a downloadable link, right? Your phone will not even allow you to download that SDK sometimes, which creates a bad experience for the user, for you. So you need to have those minimum things that are needed in 2025 to ensure that people love that experience, right? From here, you go on to launch your fundraising content, explainer videos, etc., to see if there is an interest, right, in interest in your product. And from there you can go on to measure metrics which are very relevant for you to see how people are reacting. Apart from the usage metrics, you also have certain things like customer acquisition rate. Are people How much money do you need to spend to get one user, right? This is very important, because if it takes too much of effort for you to communicate, convince, and onboard a particular user, then scalability becomes a very, very big challenge. The other metric that mostly you look at this point of time during MVP, after you launch your MVP, is churn, maybe, which is like, if you're building a SaaS product or something, mostly people are having a subscription, especially monthly subscriptions. After 1 month, do they renew the subscription, is a very big question, because the effort that you might have put to get that one user in for the first month might be too huge, that the first month of payment that they have made might not be enough to cover that expense, which is the cost of customer acquisition, we call it at this point. So you need to see all of these metrics, and each of these metrics will give you an insight into how your product is performing, right? Your CAC might give you cost of acquisition for a user, might give you a perspective on how the communications are going, whether the communications are working or not, whether it makes sense to the user at all, and is there something that you need to refine at this stage of time. If you're getting like a lot of people visiting a website but very little number of signups, it signals another thing, that maybe they're not getting the confidence that they need to put in that effort to log in or create a user. If you're getting a user, they paid the money for the first month, and there's a huge churn rate, then it shows that some of the features that they're looking for are not very, very exciting for them, or it is not actually solving their problem in the real world. Although it promised a lot of things, it didn't. So each of these metrics gives you a perspective into how the entire MVP journey of your user is going, and you can tweak each of these stages. There is going to be mistakes. It's not going to be that everything will be perfect. You will face challenges, but measuring is very important, because when you measure, you understand what is going wrong and where it is going wrong, so that you can better those things to have a refined product that goes to a PMF stage in the future. So let's look at some of the key metrics you can track, some of those things I just mentioned. Um, so the first thing is client acquisition cost, or CAC. This is today one of the most important metric. Um, any investor you go to will ask you for this, because this is the unit cost of getting one user, right? So you go and ask, I need 1 crore rupees to an investor, and you say, I will put 50% of this on marketing, right? They're understanding that you're going to put like 50 lakhs, and the next question they would ask you is, what is your cost of acquisition? And you would say, my cost of acquisition is like 1,000 rupees. So they can immediately say, or they can immediately gauge that you would easily get like 5,000 users from this investment, right? Because your cost of acquisition is 1,000 rupees, 50 lakhs you're putting into marketing alone, which means totally you're going to get 5,000 users. And let's say you go say that I'm going to get like 20,000 users. The investor is never going to believe you because your numbers are completely off the chart, right? With 1,000 rupees CAC, you cannot ever get 20,000 users by spending just 50 lakh rupees. So these are some metrics that are very, very relevant for investors also to see whether there is unit profitability possibility for you. You might not be profitable as a company today. They don't care about that, but they really, really do care about something called unit profitability. And CAC is a very important metric to get you there. Uh, the uh, the next thing is churn rate, right? Uh, Churn rate is basically how much. So for CAC, the formula could be considered as like the total money that you have spent. Like you take a period like last 3 months. Let's say you spend some money on marketing managers, you spend some money on Facebook, Instagram, everything else as paid advertisements. You might have given some money to an SEO agency to manage your SEO for your business. You might have hired some creative guys to create some posters and things and reels and everything else. So all of this together becomes the money that you spend on marketing and awareness for your product. So that becomes the total money, and then you divide it by and see how many new users were you able to acquire in the last 3 months. So that gives you essentially what is your client acquisition cost. um, Huh. And then comes the next thing, which is churn rate. Okay, so churn rate is something every company will experience in their lifetime. So especially for SaaS products, right, where there's a subscription model, the churn rates would be higher. For products that are on demand pay, like like a Swiggy or a Zomato, where you pay only when you're using, you might not experience churn rate very, very specifically every month, or it gets a little difficult for you to identify what's your churn rate. So instead of churn rate, such kind of products use a different metric called monthly active users or daily active users or weekly active users, right? So monthly active users, especially for something like a Swiggy or a Zomato or an Uber or all of these products, a monthly active user is a relevant figure, right? They will have like maybe 10,000 users, but their monthly active users might be 3,000 or 4,000. So that's a different, because it's a different business model. But churn rate is a very interesting business metric if you're especially into subscription-based businesses, because you're putting in an effort, you're doing all the marketing, and you're getting one customer come in. They might be on a trial period, and then from there you're taking them to a paid program. Now you put so much of effort, right? From all the way from awareness to acquisition to activation and to payment, right? Now let's say after all this effort, let's say this person drops out after 2 months or 3 months of subscription, right? You might not have got the you might not have even got back the customer acquisition cost that was spent. So you need somebody to stay for a particular period of time to ensure that you get back the money that you spent to actually capture them in the first place. That's the first problem. The second thing is, the second problem that you would normally face is, let's say you have a very huge churn rate, like 10% month on month, right? In 10 months, ideally what would have happened is, the first month, the people who joined in the first month, all of them would have gone out of the system, right? Ideally, if you're losing 10% every month, the first month you had 100 people, by the end of the 10th month, all that 100 people who came in the first month would have washed out. So which means next month, to if you had 100 users first month, second month, by the end of the first month you lost 10 people, so 90 people. So the second month the team would have to spend more effort to first come back to the normal level of that 100 user and then add more users. So if you're having larger churn rate, the effort that your marketing team is putting to grow will actually, the net result will be not positive, right? Every month you will get new users, but the total number of users will not grow up drastically because you also have a large churn rate. So you need to see how you can reduce the churn rate. So this is a metric again to see whether whether your product is working well and people are loving your product and people are having fun with what you have given them. So how do you use it? How do you calculate it? Is basically the users that you have lost divided by the total users per period. So churn rate is mostly taken like either a monthly churn rate is there or a quarterly churn rate is there. If you're a large company with longer years of operations, you also can look at annual churn rates. But mostly for SaaS companies, especially with monthly subscriptions, we normally look at a monthly churn rate. For a product where you have like uh, uh, for something where you're buying something, right? Like say Book My Show, you're coming and buying a ticket, or you're going into Zomato and you're ordering food, right? A better metric, because you don't have churn exactly because you're not stopping subscription or anything. You actually need to look at another metric called repeat purchases, right? How often is people coming? Let's say you have 100 users. Of this, what percentage of them are again and again and again coming and buying from your company? Like, instead of a churn rate, that would be a better metric. The next thing that you can keep track of is active users. So this is what I mentioned: daily active users, weekly active users, or monthly active users. If you're a product that needs to be used on a daily sense, right, then daily active users make sense. So things like Instagram and everyone would actually look at daily active users. So when they say we have this many number of users, they're actually giving you the daily active users, not the actual accounts in their platform. They're actually talking about active users. For a product like, let's say, Swiggy, Zomato, Uber, Ola, all of these things where you might not use every day, but you might use 2 or 3 times in a week. They look at weekly average users. Certain products that doesn't require a daily check-in or a weekly check-in, they also look at monthly active users as a reporting metric, right? Very few products look at actually annual active users. That's not I mean, you can calculate that figure, but it doesn't give you any particular value. But active users, what percentage of your total users is actively using a product, and you can determine whether it needs to be a weekly measure or a monthly measure or a daily measure, depending upon what sort of product or solution you're giving. And on top of that, you can also see what percentage of your users are repeat purchases. The next thing that you need to look at is customer lifetime value. Customer lifetime value is basically, what it means is, like, let's say Zomato spends 1,000 rupees to get one user into their system, right? The first purchase that person might have bought is like something for 250 rupees. Zomato might make like 50 rupees of that purchase, right? So from 50 rupees, they're never going to recover that 1,000 rupees they put in the marketing effort to get that one user. But this particular user, over the next 3 years, probably might order, Zomato might have some number that this user might order like 300 times over the next 3 years, which is ideally considered as a good investment from their side. So this is called the lifetime value. Basically, over a defined period of time, how much money can you expectedly generate from a particular user is basically called as customer lifetime value. The next metric that you can look at is uh, you know there are many other metrics also. Depending upon what business you're running, depending upon what startup, what sector you're in, I would also urge you to come up with your own metrics. These are some standard metrics, but I would also urge you to come up with some metrics that are very, very specific and relevant to your particular business model, and this would help you to be on top of things. Some of the documentations that you can prepare for being successful with your startup. So first is feature listing for MVP. I can give you a framework called Winning Product Framework. All of you can go and Google this. So this is called Winning Product Framework. So it's something that would help you to identify which features needs to be listed for an MVP. I think we are almost at the end of time, so I might not be able to show you that. But when you list features for your MVP, you can always definitely just start by listing it, like, whatever comes to your head. Like, you can list down like 20, 30, 40 features. But then how do you identify which of these features can work and will make sense, all of that? I use something called a winning product framework. This helps you to determine which are the must-have features of your product. Like, as I said, in 2025, there are certain things that consumers will demand that I need it in a product, right? Uh, and on top of that, what is that one or two strong differentiator feature? Like, nobody else has that feature, and then does that feature also add really great value to your customer? So that could be a benchmark on identifying how or what is your MVP, right? So the first thing is like, one thing, the features that definitely add a lot of value to your consumers, but might not have any differentiator, right? These are called your must-haves, right? Like payment gateway, right? In 2025, it's not a differentiator. Every other app has that, right? But does it add a lot of value to your consumer that you have a payment gateway? Yes, because then they can pay using their card, or maybe their UPI, or maybe they can pay through some pay later. Hundreds of things that are available out there, and that will be really, really helpful for them. So without a payment integration today, a technology driven application or something, nobody would be using, right? So this is a must-have feature. So similarly, now you'll go ahead and find something that is very, very different. Nobody else has it, but does it also add a lot of value to solving the problem? And the value map that you've created, which is the pain and the gain map that you've created, does it give a lot of value to the consumer, right? So very strong differentiator, very strong value. If you can find two features or three features like that, along with the must-haves, that could become your MVP, right? Even one strong differentiator that adds a lot of value to your consumer would be good enough to launch your MVP, right? Because now you have everything that the existing solutions in the world has, plus one strong differentiator with one strong value proposition for your consumer, which will be the reason why people would come to your product rather than the 10 or 20 other things that are already out there in the market and trying to solve similar things. So that's how you get to that MVP stage. So, but it starts off by listing down all the features, right? And how and then you find the, so list down, find the most important feature that you cannot live without, and find one differentiating feature that would be the attraction for your product. The second thing would be a technology architecture document, especially if you're building, any software product. You definitely need this. Even for hardware soft products, you need a technology architecture document. So this can be your, if you're a software product, this can be your wireframes. This can be talking about how your data is structured, how the data flows, all of those things. Your software architecture document is very, very valuable. If you're building a hardware product, then these are your, if it has electronic components, maybe it is your electronic drawings. If it has parts, different sort of parts that needs to be there, how are each of these connected, how is a wiring systems going to work, like all of that in a technical document is very, very important to have. A lot of startups might not work on this initially, because like documentation is the worst thing for a lot of people to do. But good to have this, because if somebody else is coming onto the board, you're hiring team members, they have a reference thing to start with, rather than you explaining everything from beginning. And also you get to go back and see what you have actually written down from an architectural perspective, so that you're not going wrong in between while you're building and going ahead with the daily challenges. um, definitely once we start measuring, so you need to put all of these metrics. You need to have like an Excel sheet or something where you can track all of these metrics on a monthly basis or a weekly basis. So think of this like a personalized dashboard, where the founding team can see what is your cost of acquisition, what's your churn, what's your active users, what's the revenue that you're generating, how many users are free, how many users are paid, how many are repeating users. So all of these different metrics that you have already determined as metrics for success for your startup, keep that, create a sheet for that. And every month you put onto it and you see how this is growing. Like you can easily be able to visualize how your startup is growing. Among all of these metrics, I would suggest that you find one North Star metric. So this is the metric that one single metric that signals that your startup is growing, right? So if you can find this one single metric, that would be the mother of all metrics. But then you also need to have all of these standard metrics that would help you. Uh, and at the end of the day, you need to have your revenue model, your business model. Mostly you would have something like a business model canvas that you have done at some early stages. Keep updating these things because your product is going to evolve, your customer is going to evolve. You're going to get real feedbacks because once you launch the MVP. So you might have to go back and update your business model canvas. You might have to update your revenue models. So all of that, keep updating so that you have everything at your fingertips. So with that, we come to the end of this session. Um, Over to you, Sruti.
Thank you so much, sir. Actually, sorry because we can't take questions who all have shared their questions with us because of lack of time. But thank you again so much, sir, for such an insightful and practical session. How prototype and MVPs bridge the gap between ideas and impact. You shared your thoughts and a wonderful presentation with us. So, on behalf of Gene Cube and everyone here today, we extend our heartfelt gratitude for sharing your time, experience, and wisdom with us. Thank you once again for joining us, and thank you all of you, all the participants, for being a part of this insightful session. Have a great day ahead. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thanks a lot. Bye bye.
Thank you, sir. Bye bye.